Such a horrible thing to happen to any creature, and it was so awful in so many ways.
It is one of nature's simple creatures, but in Minnesota's famed waters, a mysterious disease is deforming and killing hundreds of thousands of frogs.
We certainly were concerned about human health issues also, so we really wanted to look at every aspect of the environment of the frog. It took over my life.
Judy Helgen of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is here to tell us more. Dr. Helgen, you've had 14 test sites in Minnesota, and you've discovered it's definitely in the water.
Well, I'm Judy Helgen. I'm a retired research scientist from Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I wrote a book called Peril in the Ponds, and that is telling this story.
So we are in St. Bonnie, and we are near Missile Park, which is where there is a marker to the Nike missile base that had been located very near here during the earliest parts of the Cold War. In the early days of the Cold War, if a nuclear war was to break out between the Soviet Union and the United States, nuclear weapons would have to be delivered the old-fashioned way. You'd have to get them in a plane and fly them over the North Pole and actually fly over the cities that you were going to bomb. When the defense schemes were being put together in the 1950s, one of the earliest missile defense plans was to actually place these Nike missile bases on the perimeter of major American cities so that if the Soviet bombers got over the North Pole and they hadn't been shot down over that or over Canada, the last resort was you would have to have these missiles come out of the ground and shoot the planes down very close to their final targets.
If you're going to lock someone up for life and put them in that hopeless situation, that by itself is a horrendous thing. To me, the problem has always been and still is money. I'm Michael Resman. I'm a former occupational therapist. Now I'm retired. I'm an amateur historian and an author. My wife and I were looking for jobs. She's also an occupational therapist, and Rochester State Hospital had 2 jobs open, so we started there in 1972. I stayed at the state hospital until it closed in 1981. Some of the patients that we were working with were chronic patients. They'd been in the hospital for 40, 50 years, had regressed as a consequence greatly because the environment that in those bad old days was really horrific.
This is a story that most people actually don't know much about. Most people, when you talk about World War II, had no idea that we had prisoners of war in the state of Minnesota. My name is Dean Simmons, and I wrote a book titled Swords into Plowshares. The book's about the prisoners of war who were held in Minnesota during World War II.
I initially started with architecture and landscape, and so I kind of liked the blueprint aspect of those compositions. And then it got more honed in on the human body composition and blueprint. And so I literally delved deeper and took an anatomy course at that university. And I just loved it. I like how it's applicable to everyone.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way next, Off 90. We learn about making wooden bowls in Byron. We talk to restaurant owners in Rochester to see how they're dealing with the coronavirus. We go on a photo safari for Relics of the Past by Glenville. And a double shot of big band jazz. These stories are coming up next, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this trip, Off 90. Mike Denny was unhappy with the direction his life was going, so one day he decided to make a change. He had been woodworking for decades as a hobby, and wood turning, the process of making wooden bowls, had become Mike's passion. Mike turned that hobby into his profession, and he started a business called Good Wolf Bowls. We paid Mike a visit to learn how wood turning is done.
The Minnesota Music Video Menagerie is a first-year event, and it is a drive-in, FM broadcasted battle of the videos. And we are kind of trying to find a way to bring the music community together in a safe way, have all the cars parked 6 feet apart, and get to see this kind of cinematic experience of local Minnesotan music videos on the big screen.
We always said, you know, it'd be a great way to kind of have a local music festival through music videos. But then, yeah, we came across Dan Van Hook's pandemic pictures that he was holding on this massive screen out at Olmsted County. And we're like, that's gotta be the screen for this.